The moment the little girl tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Mister, my mom says you look lonely," something inside the millionaire cracked so quietly that no one noticed, except him, and maybe you, watching this story unfold right now. And before you decide whether to stay or scroll away, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this only reach the people who need them when you help them travel. Now, let me tell you why that whisper would follow him for the rest of his life. It was raining, the kind of rain that makes a city feel heavier, pressing umbrellas down and thoughts inward. The man sat alone on a polished wooden bench outside a cafe he owned but never entered anymore. His name was Daniel Hartman, and most people in the city knew it. They knew it from towers of glass with his name etched on them, from charity galas he rarely attended, from business magazines that called him visionary and untouchable. What they didn't know was that he came to this bench every Thursday at the same time, not to be seen, but to disappear for a moment. That was when Lily appeared, no more than 6 years old, holding a pink umbrella that was slightly broken, one metal rib poking out like a stubborn thought. She looked at him the way children do, without strategy or fear, just curiosity. Her mother stood a few steps back, rummaging through a worn bag, tired eyes glancing up every few seconds with the instinctive worry of someone who couldn't afford distractions. Lily leaned close, lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret, and said the words that would undo him. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't, because she was right, and because no one had ever said it out loud before. Lily's mother rushed over, apologizing too quickly, pulling her daughter back. "I'm so sorry," she said, cheeks flushed. She talks to everyone." Daniel finally looked up. The mother's name was Maria, and life had not been gentle with her. You could see it in the way she stood, braced for rejection, in the way she apologized for existing. Daniel surprised himself by smiling. It felt unfamiliar, like using a muscle he'd forgotten he had. They talked, awkwardly at first, about the rain, about the cafe, about how Lily insisted the bench was the saddest place in the city and needed more people. Maria laughed at that, a small sound, but real. Daniel found himself inviting them inside for hot chocolate, an impulse he almost ignored out of habit. Almost. Inside the cafe, warmth wrapped around them. Lily pressed her hands to the glass, watching the rain race itself down the windows. Maria spoke carefully, revealing pieces of her life without meaning to. She worked 2 jobs. Lily's father had left years ago. Rent was always late. Hope was something she budgeted in small amounts. Daniel listened, really listened, something he hadn't done in years. He didn't mention his money. He didn't mention who he was. For once, he was just a man at a table, laughing when Lily declared the marshmallows too fluffy to trust. Over the next weeks, Thursdays changed. Daniel still came to the bench, but now he waited. Lily and Maria came too, sometimes soaked, sometimes smiling, always real. The city seemed less heavy. But life doesn't like to let happiness settle without a test. One Thursday, they didn't show up. The next week, neither. Daniel felt the old loneliness creep back in, sharper this time because he knew what he was missing. He asked around, quietly, carefully, until he learned Maria had lost her apartment. A medical bill, a missed shift, a chain reaction that ended with eviction. They were staying in a shelter across town. Daniel went home that night to a penthouse that echoed. He stood in front of windows that showed him the whole city and realized how small his world had been. For years, he'd poured himself into building things that didn't love him back. He thought about the bench, about Lily's whisper, about how silence can be louder than noise. The next morning, he went to the shelter. Maria didn't recognize him at first. When she did, embarrassment flooded her face. Daniel stopped her before she could apologize. He knelt in front of Lily, who grinned like she'd been expecting him all along. "You found the new sad place," she said. Daniel laughed, and this time it didn't hurt. He didn't offer money right away. He offered help, real help, lawyers to fight unfair charges, a job at the cafe with flexible hours, an apartment he owned but had never lived in, modest, sunlit, close to Lily's school. Maria cried then, deep, shaking sobs that came from months of holding it together with nothing but will. News traveled fast once people realized who Daniel Hartman was and what he was doing. Some called it a publicity stunt. Some waited for the catch. But there wasn't one. Daniel started coming to the cafe every day, not as an owner, but as a presence. He listened to stories. He learned names. He noticed loneliness everywhere once he knew how it looked. Years passed. Lily grew. The bench outside the cafe was replaced with a small park. On a plaque near the swings, there was a simple sentence: "This place exists because someone spoke when silence was easier." On the opening day, Lily, now taller, steadier, stood beside Daniel. "You don't look lonely anymore," she said. Daniel smiled, eyes wet. "Neither do you, and maybe that's why you're here, listening to this story. Because loneliness doesn't always look like being alone, and connection can begin with something as small as a whisper." If this story touched you, if it reminded you to see people a little more clearly, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might be sitting on their own bench right now. Sometimes, the smallest voice is the one that changes everything.